Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another week of Growing with My Fellow Growers. I'm your host, Jack Greenstock, joined as always by an amazing panel. I'm going to pass it over first this week to Spartan Grown.
Sorry, I'm doing so many things at once here. I'm eating my dinner.
Did we just lose Spartan Grown? I think we did. Oh boy.
Oh no.
Well, off to a little bit of a
He
choppy
said he was
start.
doing so many things and then he just bailed. He's like, I'm done.
The computer's like,
Yeah,
nah.
I was getting YouTube started, so I just noticed that he disappeared.
I looked away
Spartan,
for
come
a second,
back
and then boom, he's gone. Hopefully we'll get Spartan back here in just a moment, but I'll pass it next to Dr. MJ.
to me. Yeah. Hey everyone. I am Dr. MJ Coco from cocoforcannabis.com. Yeah, happy Thanksgiving coming up to everybody out there. I'm grateful for all of you. So
I'm grateful to see Spartan Grown joining us again in the chat, as well as
yeah,
Matthew
I'm really
Gates
grateful for
jumping
Spartan
back in.
too. Oh, and I'm grateful for Matthew Gates joining us.
We're starting to look
Let's
like a
see
panel
Dr.
here. I'm going to pass it
Greenstock.
back to Spartan Grown and re-welcome him for the second try. And
Sorry, yeah.
here we go.
Like I said, I was doing too many things at once, and then I shut everything down when I was trying to get back to the mute button. But I'm
We
Spartan
thought you
Grown.
just cut. We didn't make the cut, man. You're like, something's got to go. I'm out of
No.
this show. I'm like, there's too many
Unfortunately,
other things
everything
going on.
closed, so it was like a whole restart.
I'm glad we made the cut. I'm glad you came back.
But yeah, I'm Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram as Spartan Grown, or all one word, no spaces, or you can shoot me an email at spartangrown@gmail.com. Or if you're interested in lighting, you can shoot me an email at russ@gmlarmy.com.
Good to have you back for the second time this tonight and just generally on the show. But next, we'll pass it over to Matthew Gates.
I'm glad that from all that context, I was able to figure out what happened. Um, yeah, Matthew Gates, IPM specialist. And if we don't have any other subjects, I have some cool research that I've come across recently that's aphid related and has to do with trichomes for plant defense. That might be interesting. But other than that, I'm excited to talk more. And if you have any questions, sit in the chat.
You're muted, Doc.
Is it that trichomes are basically like fly paper for aphids, or is it more complicated than that?
Well, actually, the partly that, but also for the non-glandular trichomes, like I think it's something that intuitively makes sense. And I'm going to use a metaphor. It's like how on your own hair or something, like a mosquito can't land and penetrate your skin as easily as if you had smooth skin because it's in
Right.
the way. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
spikes basically that keep something from getting in there.
Absolutely. Cool. Cool. I found lots of aphids kind of stuck in trichomes in the past. So I've always wondered if this was just sort of like the plant's natural fly paper, right? You can find them stuck on the fly paper, and then you stuck in like the sugar leaves and stuff. I'm like, maybe there's something to this.
Funny enough,
It's
the
definitely a part of it. Yeah.
unrelated article that I had, and it's not a cannabis specific one, but it's related to my specific cannabis grow. And it made me start doing some Googling because I had, and aphids made me think of this, but oftentimes I think you hear of ants husbanding aphids or aphid husbandry, I think is how it's referred to. But ants will bring aphids onto the plant to basically make the plant a little bit weaker. The aphids have different attack mechanisms that can kind of open it up and allow the ants to, I think it's honeydew or something else like that. Matthew could probably better describe. But
Yeah, it's honeydew.
whenever I've heard of ants in a cannabis grow, I've always exclusively heard of them as being an IPM threat, pest, and or potential problem, but I've never once heard them looked at as a potential positive, which kind of made me have to rethink a little bit because when I had my most recent incident in my grow, I had two plants side by side, Spartan Grown's Project V F2. I mentioned one of them lost about the bottom 10% of the root ball, and that pot, for whatever reason, I thought the soil was about the same, but I've been reusing the same soil for like 3 years. So there's probably abundance of organic matter that's built up in certain pockets and not so much in other pockets. But one of them, the slightly slower growing, I think was getting a little bit more waterlogged because the faster growing plant was taking up the water a little bit quicker. And I was bottom watering in the tray all at the same time. So that one probably was a little bit like muddier, I guess, in the soil and getting maybe a little bit compacted. And out of nowhere, there just seemed to be like a ant colony that formed within the pot. I noticed because there was maybe a dime-sized hole in my rice hulls that is my mulch layer on like the very bottom right corner. And then that turned into like a quarter size, and that turned into like a silver dollar size. And now maybe almost half of the pot has no rice hull mulch. And at a certain point, there was hundreds, maybe thousands of ants kind of swarming. But I only saw one at any point go up onto the plant. And I did take my fingers and I squished it. And I looked around for all the rest of the plant. And as I mentioned, this one was like a little bit behind. It was slower. I actually topped the other plant to make it even in height. And from that point, both the topping and then the ants showing up, the plant that got the ants in the soil started performing phenomenally. It caught up and now it's like the same height and it's growing really well. So I actually Googled benefits of ants in soil, and there's like a meta-analysis that I found, a scientific research article. It's called The Effects of Ants of Ant Nests on Soil Fertility and Plant Performance, a meta-analysis. So I think I was planning on kind of potentially doing a Learn to Grow Part 2 Ohio, but maybe we can do that next week because it sounds like Matthew has an interesting article about aphids, which then can sort of lean into this article that I came across that might show at least a little bit of a alternative perspective. And then maybe Matthew can even refute that and be like, hey, ants actually are bad, or maybe there's just so many different types of ants, you can't just generalize. But I think it'd be an interesting discussion. So maybe, Matthew, if you do have that article ready, maybe we could get into the aphids impact with trichomes. And then from there, look a little bit into this ant meta-analysis and talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, for sure. Sounds like you know me.
I just clicked the multiple participants can share screen button, which I didn't previously have. So if you were trying to share and not able to, that would have been why. But now you should be able to.
I think we're good to go. So as you can see, I've been looking at a whole bunch of stuff lately. And actually, since you mentioned that, I saw an article or for this video, I'm going to be citing it too because it showed that the honeydew excreta, the excretion of aphids, because it's so sugary, high carbon, low nitrogen waste, and some microbes in there too. When it hits when it hits the soil, it changes the microbial balance. It changes. So some microbes, sorry, fungi and bacteria, some of them are benefited by this and they'll expand more, and some of them are detrimented by this, or they're detrimented by those microbes growing, right? And so that might be interesting to talk about in reference to what you were referring to. But this is the research called location, feeding site affects aphid performance by altering access and quality of nutrients. And I'm not going to go through all the text. I think that might be a little bit dry, but the cliff notes is here in this diagram. Well, there's a few here. One of them is to say that aphid performance was enhanced on stems, interestingly, not on leaves, which is, as we know, the main site of photosynthesis. So you'd think even that you'd have more of a concentration of sugars. But at least in the plants they looked at here, they didn't. They did not, actually. And you also saw more aphids as well on the stems. And part of the reason for this is because the trichome density was different. Also, the age of the plant is often the case. For some plants, this doesn't matter as much, but for other plants, you might have more trichomes on the young leaf shoots, and you might have less as the leaf ages or something like that. That's pretty common. And that can change, as the leaf just literally grows, right? Like how your skin grows. But I thought that was kind of interesting, and it seems like a lot of the assimilated sugars are actually, and a lot of the amino acids that the aphids need are in the stem, probably because of how transport works in the plants.
Was this on cannabis or another
No,
plant?
this is not on cannabis. This is not on cannabis.
My first thought here, Matthew, just as you're describing it, is there's a lot of different sort of leaves, especially as the plant gets deeper into flowering. Most of the leaves that are adjacent to flower clusters will have some trichomes on them, but certainly those that are coming out of the flower clusters will have a lot more than like the larger fan leaves that are attached to the primary stalk. So is there any differentiation along that, or is it just sort of like leaves or leaves?
Oh, well, in this particular research, they're not covering cannabis.
Oh, I'm
That's
sorry.
not the case. Yeah.
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
even
This
without it
is
being
this was
cannabis,
on soybean. There's
I'm
soybean
curious
aphid.
because you mentioned certain
Gotcha.
plants have earlier trichomes on certain parts of leaves, and like if there's if morphology changes from earlier stages, like vegetative stages versus flowering stages, because I know tomatoes also have a lot of trichomes and things like that. So lots of plants have trichomes, and they change throughout different stages of development. Maybe similar or different to cannabis. I'm not
And some
actually.
cultivars are different too. So you got some where the leaves are more barren, they're glabrous, and some of them are more hirsute, and they're more hairy. And that's kind of interesting because some, for example, famously Persimmilus does worse. I've talked about it here before, where the hairier trichomy leaves of the tomato plants interfere with the Persimmilus's movement and hunting of spider mites. So that's kind of interesting. So sometimes there can be benefits. And I bring it up here because maybe some of it's extrapolatable to cannabis. I think that, although I think this is mainly concerned with like the strigose non-glandular trichomes because they're acting kind of like spikes do in like a palisade or something, or like a phalanx, right? Like with all the guys with the spears and the shield, you have the spear out. It's kind of hard to get in there without getting poked. So what that ends up doing is it creates, and I was looking at some other papers related to this. For example, this is an old one, so take it with more of a grain of salt. But there's a bit of a relationship between trichome density, which I tried to find in the materials and methods, but this report from like 1986 didn't really describe it very well. So again, I'm not sure what they mean by that, but or by how much, right? The other research report did that a lot better. But there's a difference where if you had more of these pointy trichomes, the aphid couldn't like get its beak in there. It couldn't get its proboscis in there to feed. So they were a little bit less longevitous and they had less reproductives and things like that. So
The
just small
interesting
little
thing,
advantages.
if you go back there just for a second, was the scale. It went from 0 to
It's a log
1.
scale.
Oh, okay. And yeah, that's just I think something that should be noted because when I looked down, that wasn't what I was expecting to see. And then it almost looks like it would be linearly sort of growing, but then being on this type of chart, it's a just something to acknowledge there that it's not going up at an even rate. There's much higher numbers towards the end, uh, obviously, but yeah.
Oh no, that's an excellent point. Yeah. And so this is the kind of thing where when I think of like things that people can breed for resistance, it looks like the physicality. Oh, the other thing is that I think it was in this report, might have been this one. Now I'm forgetting which one I'm talking about here. No, I think it's this one. But they were talking about how actually the physical structure of the trichomes seem to do better than the like chemical agents that were like in glandular trichomes, essentially.
That makes
This
sense
might
to
have
me
been
because in a sense, like if you're wading through a forest and there's like thousands of trees, and they're very densely packed and you could barely fucking get through there, it's gonna impede you more than going through a forest that maybe has like a tree every, few feet or yards, but they're like if you climbed up it and ate a fruit out of it, you might get really intoxicated or fucked up. But glandular trichomes do a pretty good job of actually storing that chemical within the gland of the trichome. So unless the pest or beneficial interacts with the interior of it, I don't think that they're going to be necessarily as impacted as if they were trying to, work their way past.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that like also like although it's hard for us to feel, but like at that scale, if you're like heavier or if you got like a lot of hairs or something, like maybe you're more liable to break it somewhat and then kind of get all that nasty stuff on you. And so, and some insects are going to be attracted to the compounds we like, which is unfortunate. So there
We had a
is some of that going on too.
we do have a question. It says, what influences winged aphid prevalence? I found a few in a population of aphids in one greenhouse, but not in another. Same plants, same biotype, different environment.
Yeah, there's a few different ones. The two big ones is that generally it's a seasonal change and a change in the plant's senescence and crowding. So the first two end up being usually closely related. So like it tends to be that the like for an annual plant, it's going to start to senesce as the seasons change, right, into autumn or something in temperate locations. But that's what things are like, which most aphids are temperate. But the other one is crowding. So for some aphids, they just do a really bang up job and they get really dense. Then some of the females will produce progeny that will then become winged, and those will alight and find other places. And then there'll be a fundatrix, as they say, which is like a founding colony mother. But oftentimes that's reserved also for just when like springtime rolls around. A lot of aphids will overwinter as eggs, and those first ones that come out, either they will be winged or they'll make progeny that are winged. So it'll happen also in the beginning of the season as well.
But
But
it
I
may
think
be
that
a
we've
sign that sort
exhausted
of
this
aphid
topic.
dense. Sorry, Matthew. It
Oh,
may be a
no, you
sign that
first.
like aphid density had reached a troublesome point, right? And they started growing rings for that reason.
I think so. I think that you'd really not want to let it get to even approach that,
Right.
if possible. Yeah.
Yeah, if they're doing it because they're of crowding or whatever.
Yeah. Although sometimes it's weird, like with rice root aphid going to like cannabis in particular, sometimes you don't see it because they're in the roots, and they'll like have multiple generations, presumably without wings, and then start producing the winged ones, and they come out of nowhere. So be careful, guys, if that happens to you. That can happen, or maybe you're unlucky and a winged aphid got into somebody's cutting, and so they start out that way, maybe.
Is this something that just happens over like a single generation? Like they're that quickly evolving that they are realizing, oh, we have too much of a population here. I need my offspring to be able to fly. So I'm going to birth a winged aphid, or is it like the current aphids that are alive are like, I need to engage whatever it is that allows them to grow wings? I don't know if that's even possible, or
Is
if
it
it
the
has to be the.
temperature of the eggs or something, Matthew? Yeah, what is the mechanism?
Yeah, I actually do know the deep lore a little bit, and I think that while this is different for different species, I think that the triggers are often like physical. So like, and this is true for other insects that have like a swarming behavior, like locusts, for example. There can be like a detection of like the light, even like they can kind of tell what season it is by like where the sun is or something like that, or how much daylight hours they get, kind of like with plants. But also it can be like physical movement, like basically if they touch each other a lot, right? Like if they're walking around and wow, there's a lot of like hustle and bustle essentially, then I guess they can pick up on that and that can be like a trigger point. So it's like a mechanical sensory input. And
We should
then
just imagine
also
like people hustling down the sidewalk in New York, and some of them are just like sprouting wings because they're kind of annoyed that there's so many people bumping into them and all around
because
them.
there's too much traffic. Yeah,
Yeah, there's too
exactly.
much
Yeah.
traffic, and they just kind of like fly away.
I think everybody would be happy with that in that situation.
I'm taking
Yeah,
the
I wish
Winged
humans could do
Express.
that. That'd be
Yeah.
pretty dope ability to just kind of like grow wings when there's so many people around that it's like bothering you. Like you could just grow wings. That'd be dope.
On a societal level, I guess we kind of did that with planes, but yeah.
Yeah, true. But
But
Helicopters even
no,
too, and
much more.
gliders to
I
an
do want
extent.
to fly. That would be nice. And then the other thing is as gustatory. So like they can literally like taste the difference, especially if this is like on an annual plant. And again, they'll be dependent on the plant, but then that will tell them like, hey, I think it's time to make the winged forms. Now,
It's
how
like
conscious this process is, I don't know, but it tends to be reliable and consistent, and you can test for it. So
so they're like
on some level,
flying
they know.
flying south for the winter like a bird. Like they're like, oh shit, it's getting cool in here in, I don't know, mid or northern California. I'm gonna, move southerly to go get some more warmer weather and some, fruit and veggies that are still growing. Because like eventually far enough north, the seasons get sort of phased out if there's snow and things like that. So it's interesting that they sort of mimic that. And there's so many different triggers. It's not just like oh, it hits this temperature and that or whatever. They could be a certain population size. The light was interesting to me actually as well. And it makes sense. I was like, oh wow, that's really fucking cool. They would evolve to do that. And then I was like, wait, that kind of makes sense. They evolve alongside plants, which are doing the same thing, reacting to different light
Yeah.
cycles and changing during the season. So as the plant is changing and like going through bolt during, certain times of year, the insects know. They're like, oh, these plants are smelling different and tasting different and, growing different. So we're going to adapt to that. And so it makes sense.
Sure.
It's just when we learn about it, it's like, oh shit, the intricacies of this are so interlaced and intertwined. And it's a really fascinating dance
Ecology.
we get to see.
Yeah. All those interactions are cool.
And then the last thing I'll say about that is that there are some aphids that they have like a virus in them that will, if they have a certain symbiont, then it actually activates the virus, believe it or not, which is kind of fascinating. And I won't go into all the details, but basically, if they have this like bacterial symbiont, then it exudes some influence that makes this virus occur. And I guess it's a dentovirus, and it makes the aphids produce wings, which is fascinating. And that's like another little like um oh, what are those what's it called? A Rube Goldberg machine, basically, is what it feels like.
There's got to be sort of a mechanism inside the aphid that makes it grow its wings, right? And like it's triggered by different things, and the virus just like trigger. That's wild.
It's like, yeah, it's like exactly. It's like a conditional trigger. It pushes the right,
it's
like you said, physiological button.
Yeah.
Or buttons in this like potential case.
Or buttons, right? A
That's
cascade effect. So
that's very fat. I really never knew this. They say you learn something new every day. Potentially if you try hard enough. But yeah, that's awesome stuff.
Yeah.
I try to. And then I'll pass that information along to people in a way that's a little bit more digestible. But you had a cool research report we could go over.
Yeah, so I just like I said, and I guess to follow up a little bit before while I'm pulling this up, my sort of solution that I normally take with the ants is sort of peppermint and cinnamon spray with a little bit of alcohol and a wetting agent, which is usually just a drop of soap, Dr. Bronner's in this case. The I don't know if I mentioned alcohol. It's vodka or rowing alcohol, both work for that one. But I didn't want to spray that on my plants or into my soil and like fuck up the soil biology a bunch. And I also found all these benefits. So I was like, do I even deal with them? But I ultimately ended up going with like a liquid bait. There's like a few different companies and things that make products, but I have noticed that the population has gone down fairly significantly, like 90%. It's about 36 hours in. I think it takes about 48 hours to work. So we'll see how that goes. I will update you all next week on that progress. But here's just the quick British Ecological Society journal, Journal of Animal Ecology. And the title is The Effects of Ant Nests on Soil Fertility and Plant Performance, a Meta-Analysis. So this was interesting. I'm going to make it a little bit larger here make it easier to read for the people. And for the listeners, I will try to remember to make sure I share these links in the YouTube video and podcast platforms after, so you can go through this yourself and read all the stuff that we skip over in cases that we do. But it's talking about how ants are worldwide. There's a mix of different things that they're looking at. They're using different statistical models to go through a few different studies. But essentially, it said ant nests showed higher nutrient and cation or cation. Everybody pronounce it a little differently. I think it's cation though.
It's cation.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
I hear everyone say different things, but yeah, cation content.
It's cation. Yeah.
It's really talking about the exchange of the ions. So just remember it that way.
Yeah, it makes sense. That always sounded more proper to me, but I've heard even recently the other way, so I always get tripped up sometimes. But yeah,
Oh, I
I
got
think
tripped up too. I've said it wrong.
ion makes it's more fun to say anyway. So anyway, but going forward from that says cation content than adjacent non-nest soil samples, but similar pH. Nutrient content was higher in ant refuse materials than in nest soils. The fertilizer effect of ant nests was also higher in dry habitats than in grassland or savannas. Cation content was higher in nests of plant feeding ants than in nests of omnivorous species, and lower in nests from agro ecosystems than in nests from any other habitat. The thing that they'll get into a little bit later is like some of these are leafcutter ants. So like it really
Yeah.
does depend on the species because some of them will come and straight up fuck up your crop right away, like not even needing aphids. So it is very species dependent and it might be difficult to identify unless you're someone like Matthew. And even then, I think Matthew would probably tell you there's probably experts that you'd have to consult potentially that are specialists in that field. I don't know. Are you one of those people that's capable of like just looking at them and being able to know the difference? Because I feel like from what I've looked into, sometimes it's subtle differences visually that maybe have to be tested for, or maybe you can just tell
Yeah,
by their
sometimes you
behavior.
can't. Sometimes you cannot tell past maybe
Yeah.
even family level. Um, and it depends on what your like level of detail is. So like under a microscope. So the answer is yes, but not like I need a key. And even then, like there are people who like they're taxonomists and they do this for like a living and they would blow me out of the water. And also there's some that you just can't tell without like genetic sequencing. So yeah,
And
there are tiers to it.
they would
Sure.
the like experts of the experts in that field would tell you exactly what Matthew just told you, and like there's some stuff that they could tell you for sure from visual, and then it does take testing on top of that. So important to realize that it is a very sort of uh, specific high level thing, but interesting just to look into because I've, like I said, been growing for quite a while and in the cannabis community, only ever heard negatives. So it is interesting to see some of the possible positives, especially because I'm seeing a lot more living soil and ants are part of the ecology. And I think that one of the other things that I read, it might be mentioned in here as well, is just like they help aeration and breakdown of organic
Yeah.
materials and matters like that. So if your soil, in my case, is like overly compacted or has too much organic material, then they can help
That's definitely
remove.
what I was thinking they were going to sort of look at more than, the nutrient availability that ants introduce into the soil, which I think is sort of interesting. But the aeration, I mean, I think that everything that sort of digs holes through the ground helps aerate the soil in ways that are helpful to plants. So, yeah.
And I think they also have microbial benefits too. I'll keep on going and it'll probably
With
pop up,
this
but
one, with that point in particular, it looks like vegetarian ants, so plant eating ants, are sort of providing the most cations back into the soil when that they're testing, which might be good as far as it goes, but the fact that they're plant eating ants is probably not good for sort of an agro ecosystem set up there for any kind of agriculture or horticulture, because those same ants that are kind of putting nutrients in the soil are like eating the plants in order to do it.
right, they're robbing it from the thing that you're trying. Your cash crop is being eaten to make your soil a little bit richer. Ultimately, you're like
Yeah,
Right.
making
exactly.
compost at that point.
Exactly. So at that point, it's like, okay, great. The soil's richer, but the plants keep eating or the ants keep eating our damn plants. I mean, it doesn't matter that the soil's richer, really, if that's going to be the case. I
That's
don't know.
why
There's a trade-off there.
that's why in my case I kept a really really close eye on the plants and seeing if they had a negative result or anything like that, or if the ants were physically going after the plant, like biting into it, taking pieces of it off. And in this case,
Well,
they weren't. But I was
sure.
still worried. I'm still worried enough that I placed a bait to go poison the queen and kill off the nest. And at this point, I'll just they've done enough aeration or whatever microbial benefit they offered to the soil. So I'm just gonna I'm about to transplant out of that pot anyway. But
Right.
it was sort of a interesting to look into this. And point four, it actually says plants showed higher green/root biomass and fitness on ant nest soils than in adjacent non-nest sites, but plant density and diversity were unaffected by the presence of ant nests. So that to me shows, at least in like some of the studies that they looked at, ants potentially showed a benefit, but not a drawback. At least that's how it read to me. And we'll get deeper into this, I think, in a little bit. But yeah, it's interesting.
Well, that sounds like it's also dealing with sort of a natural system, not an agricultural system. So they're not looking at how it affects yield. They're just looking at plant density and plant diversity, which are sort of different metrics. I think we would have a different bar to maybe measure it by, but yeah, sure.
Well, and I think they even go on to say root growth was particularly higher in refuse materials than in ant nest soils. So I think refuse materials means like the soils that were
waste.
Yeah. So it says in ant nest soils, in leaf cutting ant nests, and in desert habitats. So the root growth was better in other situations than in the ant present ones, and at least a few things that were observed. And then finally, they say our results confirm the major role of ant nests in influencing soil fertility, vegetation patterns, and provide information about the factors that mediate the effects. First, ant nests improve soil fertility mainly through accumulation of refuse materials. Thus, different refuse dump locations, external or in the underground nest chambers, could benefit different vegetation life forms. Second, ant nests could increase plant diversity at larger spatial scales only if the identity of the favored plant changes along environmental gradients, i.e., enhancing diversity. Third, ant species that feed on plants play a relevant role in fertilizing soils, which may balance their known influence as primary consumers. Fourth, the effects of ant nests as fertility islands are larger in arid lands, possibly because fertility is intrinsically lower in these habitats. Overall, this study provides novel and quantitative evidence confirming that ant nests are key soil modifiers, emphasizing their role as ecological engineers.
Yeah, it's cool.
While it's interesting, I do actually very strongly agree with what Doc said, and that is, this is more looking at observation in nature and seeing how it's affecting the ecology of local habitats versus going into a agricultural system or a horticultural system where we're using light to grow plants indoors, like I currently
Or
am.
we're just looking at yield. We're looking at how much harvest we can get. So even if we're doing it outdoors, like if you're growing corn in a field or something, like how many bushels did you harvest that year versus like last year? Like farmers are going to be sensitive to that in a way where in nature, if you're just counting sort of the diversity and the density of plants, that's not necessarily going to attest to the productivity of that area.
Well, and D right here is a perfect example. Like it's a ant nest in the middle of what almost looks like barren dirt, and then there's a few things sprouted up around it. And so if you're like comparing that to like just barren dirt that has nothing in it, yeah, it's slightly improved, but it's not like something you're going to write home about and something that we're gonna...
So they're looking at sort of staving off the effects of desertification and other things, like how ants protect and create ecological space for vegetation.
Yeah, and like I said, this was more just my justifying to myself that like these ants might be benefiting my plant. And I actually was seeing that, because if I saw it was like pure negative right off the gate, I would have acted quicker and gotten an ant bait right off the bat and been like, all right, this is unacceptable. I'll even spray it if I have to, because like, if they're harming the plant, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to cut it off as early as possible. But it was the opposite. I actually noticed that the water was being more evenly uptaken by both plants now that the ants had kind of like burrowed their way through, making probably channels for the water to move more freely through that area of soil. I was very rigorously twice a day checking the plant just to make sure that there was no damage being done on the upper leaves and lower leaves all throughout. And it was more just this kind of reminded me of the scientific article where we found out, although cannabis is a bioaccumulator of heavy metals, it might not be the best soil remediator to like get rid of heavy metals. So it didn't like completely change what we knew, but it does. This is like the first little bit, because this is the first time I've looked for it, found any sort of positive information about ants in a cannabis cultivation setting.
Yeah,
Because
I like it. I think we can dive into adjacent areas of science. Maybe not spend 2 hours in them every week, but I definitely think we can dive into those adjacent areas, because as we, you don't just want your knowledge to be as deep as sort of what you do every day or whatever. You want to have some depth. You want to really understand what's going on, and all of these deeper looks that we get into these topics, I think, fill in that kind of understanding for us.
And I think sometimes even pulling knowledge from other gardeners, horticulturalists. Like,
Yep.
I always talk about the Johnny Caniseed. He was looking into like how citrus growers root their citrus
Yep.
cuttings, and they just use sand, straight up sand. And so he got sand at Home Depot, like Quickcrete, like pre-washed sand or whatever. It was like less than $5 for a bag of it. And he's rooted like hundreds of cuttings in there successfully, and like always under a week. And he just
Yep.
puts it in a little used food takeout tray and throws a little bit of water in there, and
Yeah, I've
maybe
said
a
that
little
a lot.
aloe.
Like, my horticultural background isn't in cannabis, and when I came to cannabis, one of the things that I was really sort of like almost struck by was cannabis growers usually only look to other cannabis growers to teach them how to grow plants, but there's like lots of other great knowledge out there about how to grow plants and how plants grow. And most of it, if not like all of it, I mean, there's some special things with cannabis plants, certainly, but like photosynthesis applies pretty broadly to like all plants, basics of nutrition, basics of different styles of practicing horticulture, and like soilless horticulture versus growing in soil, different kinds of ways to provide fertilizers to your plant. Yeah, there's a lot that we can learn from looking at sort of general horticulture and general plant science.
I was guilty of admittedly thinking like, oh, I want to look at cannabis specific stuff primarily because like we're growing cannabis and that's what we're talking about. So it is nice to have like primary resources. But at the same time, as somebody I was a cannabis gardener before anything else. I unfortunately wasn't exposed to gardening in any other fashion. I never grew my own fruits, veggies, or anything. Since growing cannabis, I've grown wheatgrass, I've grown plumeria, tomatoes, and I get why like the whole Mary tomato thing is a thing. Like it grows vegetatively. It almost looks similar in veg in a lot of stages. The seeds can be planted similarly. The soil needs are very similar. So I see why a lot of people correlate those two. But I've, by learning how to take care of a cannabis plant and understanding just the nature of the cannabis plant really well and having such a passionate connection to it over a few years, now I walk around in nature and I see like, oh, wow, that tree over there is, it's deficient in X, Y, or Z. And I might not know the exact nutrient or what's causing it, but I just know that's not quite healthy. And if, if somebody was putting their all into it and they wanted to get it to health, like there's things that they could do to get kind of worked up. And even like, just my wheatgrass that I feed my cats, it's you can learn the like overwatering, underwatering. Like the first time I bought it, the thing died in just like a couple days because I didn't really care for it. I just let them kind of chomp on it, and I thought of it as like a disposable thing, not like a living plant.
Right.
I was like, they're gonna eat a little bit of it and then it will wilt and then it'll die. Well, when it wilted, if you water it, it'll perk back up. And like
right.
I took a pair of scissors and I started trimming it, and like this little few dollar wheatgrass thing that I got for cat grass at the store when I was picking up pet food, that they actually really enjoy, and it's good for them. It prevents fur balls and it's good fiber, whatever. But I made it last, instead of 1 or 2 days, like 2 or 3 weeks now. And like, granted, there's only so much nutrient in that soil, but that investment of however many dollars into that thing, applying some of my cannabis knowledge to another plant and having success with it. And even with the plumeria, using like a sip, I use the city picker that Spartan Grown recommended, and it crushes. Like now people are asking, I'm like the plumeria guy in my neighborhood. Like everybody's asking me, what do you give your plant? How do you do it? Can you help me with mine? I helped one of my neighbors with theirs, and now theirs is blooming because I gave them like worm
Yeah, see,
castings
that's
and
the
tough
way it
grass.
should be. Like we cannabis growers, we care a lot about our plants, and we're rewarded with sort of really high value harvests if we do a good job with this, right? Like if you grow radishes, like you could love your radishes, but your radishes are worth like, 37 cents, period. Like they're never going to be worth more than 37 cents. Like we can have really valuable harvests. So we should be the gardeners that sort of invest our time and understand the science and are, at the top of our games. But man, you go to a meeting of radish growers, and these people know everything about photosynthesis, everything about taking care of their plants, about breeding, about the genetic history of the radishes that they grow. I mean, it's like I kind of look around. I'm like, come on, cannabis growers. I mean, we're helping pull the bus in that direction, but yeah, we're horticulturalists. We're peasants, also I like to say, but we're horticulturalists, and there's a lot of good information out there about horticulture that's available. And if you limit yourself to stuff that's just targeting cannabis, like tomatoes in a lot of way are similar to cannabis. You know what else is who's like way into this, and we can learn a lot from like the horticultural community, are people that grow roses. People that grow roses in containers, and specifically, they face a lot of the same kind of challenges that we do, and they're like way into the science of how to grow these things. And there's certainly some cannabis growers too, but there's like a lot of other crops out there, and absolutely, like all of those other groups of farmers happily sort of share information across different types of crops. You know what I mean? More so than we're kind of balkanized. We're kind of in our own little world over here. So let's keep opening it up and talking about plant science.
That was my experience with ornamental, with the Gerbera, for example.
Yeah.
All the Gerbera growers in California, they knew each other. And in some way, what?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh, in some ways they were in competition, right? Because they both grew Gerbera and other ornamental flowers. But at the same time, they were also united because they were also affected by the same like externalities, right? And that has always appealed to me and was one of the big like defining reasons why I enjoyed working in agriculture. Now, of course, this is not true everywhere, but I found it was true in more cases than not, and quite a bit more. So that was really cool. And I definitely empathize with that point. I do have a cool research thing that we could talk about really quickly that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Actually, it's so funny. It's comical timing. My Adobe PDF reader just had to get out. So let me get everything back online and install for me.
I think that Doc is right to say that there are really passionate people in sort of any horticulture, agriculture, if you get into it enough. Like, not every farmer is going to care that much about the breeding and things like that, but there's so much to be learned from the different fruits, veggies, and flowers. And it's just amazing to see even, local examples of like, uh, I like to look at the stuff that's growing, like rosemary growing around. Like I just recently experienced in one city, 15 minutes north. They're both North County, San Diego, but they're 15 minutes away from each other, and the plant looks exactly the same. And it's in vegetation in both of them, but it's just blue rosemary. It's like a Tuscan blue rosemary, but in veg, it's just a green, little bush. And the reason I know that it smells really strong and amazing is I work with a few clients that have dogs. I'll pet the dog and my hands smell like dog. So I'm like walking with the client after I'm working with the dog for a little bit. And then we're walking through the neighborhood, and you see this just little bush. There's hundreds of them all over the neighborhoods. And I'll find a little spot that's a little bit higher than the rest and just like even it out and pull off maybe an inch of it, like not even an inch, probably half or a quarter inch. And I'll rub it between my hands and the back of my hands. And instead of my hands smelling like dog, my hands smell like pinene and camphene and all these other terpenes and flavonoids and things like that. It smells amazing. And it smells like I just washed my hands. Like they're so much fresher. But when I went down to the city on the south, just like 15 minutes south, again, client's dog runs and greets me when I come in. Then I go walk outside, and then the next door neighbor's house has a bush that looks exactly the same. But when I pulled off that same little quarter, half inch thing, rubbed it on my hands, it smelled like a completely different, a totally different thing. It's like the same strain. They're both the Tuscan blue rosemary and only 15 minutes apart. And they look exactly the same and grown in similar conditions, but like maybe a different HOA, different type of soil. And the other thing that I was thinking when I was just walking around, like you were talking about the rose growers, and this one grower, they're like outdoing every other neighbor in the neighborhood. Their rose bush is like 8 feet tall and like 12 feet wide, and it has like white, pink, and yellow roses, and they're all beautiful. Like they should be a competition rose grower. Like this is the most amazing rose bush you could ever see. And then like the next door neighbor has a nice bush. It's like maybe 5 feet tall by like 3 feet wide. But just being next to that other person, it looks like nothing in comparison. It's like it's all white,
up, right? Just like, man, I'm not gonna be able to compete with them.
exactly.
Here's the paper. It's called Reciprocal Influence of Soil, Phylosphere, and Aphid Microbiomes. It's pretty cool. They go into a lot of detail. So they look at 3 different soils. Clayey, this is how they decided to describe it. Clayey soil, mixed soil, and sandy soil.
Okay.
And what they were looking at was movement basically of microbes from soil to the leaves, from leaf to the aphid movement, then back again to the leaves, and also aphid microbial movement. This is back to the soil.
I'll just say I have no problem with the soil description of clayey soil, mixed soil, and sandy soil. I feel like that gives a pretty accurate
it's
visual,
actually kind of what they do. Often they use loam for the middle one, but yeah, I'm fine with those terms as well.
Yeah. But the cool graphic, here's some examples of like species richness, and this is a type of like biodiversity, Shannon diversity, and then abundance of different groups. But the cool diagram is this one, which goes over the different microbial groups that they found at these different segments here. So you've got those in the soil. These are the genera. So, like, for example, longtime followers have probably heard names like Burkholderia or Pseudomonas or Parasola or Buchnera, which is a symbiont of aphids. Erisife, which is a powdery mildew, for example. And Cladosporium, I think, is also like a sooty mold. So like the black fungus that you might see with honeydew. But it was interesting also because they seem to imply that for some aphids, there's like a vectoring process potentially. And I actually looked into this for some other research, and it's been shown that aphids can vector like powdery mildew, which ostensibly makes sense, right? Because of the spores. And you'd think that in some cases it is true that aphids will sort of co-evolve with plant pathogens in a way that will be mutually beneficial. And this is true for some viruses, but it's actually the opposite for other viruses, and it'll actually make the plant unpalatable and make it want to produce winged forms to fly, which is great for the virus because then it still gets carried over, right? But powdery mildew, apparently, some research has shown actually inhibits aphid growth. So it's kind of like an unfortunate vector for it, or unfortunate symbiont. It's a parasite, but indirectly. It competes for the aphid resources. But yeah, so there's a lot of complicated names and things, but I thought it was interesting to sort of see them. I like these kinds of graphics. They have all the names, and the thickness of the lines indicates, I think, an association, or how strong the association was, corresponds to relative abundance in the respective compartment. So Yeah, so it looks like, for example, penicillium here, big association with the phylosphere on the leaves, big association with the aphids, small association with the roots, for example. So, thoughts,
Did,
comments, obnoxious
did
remarks?
were they just focusing on microbes, or did they mention anything like, a hitchhiking like mite or something on its back? What about the other pests? Are they vectors for
Just
them as well?
microbes in this one.
Okay.
They were primarily they weren't what I think they were most curious about was movement like between these three spheres, but primarily like does soil movement up into the phylosphere like then get into aphids, or vice versa, do aphids vector stuff that then eventually gets in there, like because like the research I said earlier was talking about, and it's not this paper, how carbon content soared in the soils that they looked at where aphids were there because of all the honeydew they produce. And it would cause certain microbial populations to bloom, but others would not. They would actually do worse under those conditions, or they just didn't do as well. So that's kind of fascinating, and like what Jack was saying with the ants and the possibility of being beneficial as like bioturbators. I think that this is one of those funny little situations where, um, I think that people who are big on the microbiome of the plant will conveniently forget or not realize that pests, quote unquote, like these can have interesting ramifications in the soil. And I think it also shows how quickly things can change. So like even if you do, and people who are curious about how things are like in nature, they might be, you know, a holistic ecosystem perspective that takes humans out of the equation. You might be cutting off your nose to spite your face in a way. If this is actually something that some of these organisms depend on, obviously I'm not advocating for people that have aphids in their plants, but it's one of those things where we are necessarily changing things from like the status quo, as
Jack
much as
start
we can call it a
advocating for
status quo.
ants, and Matthew's now advocating for leaving the aphids on the
Yeah,
plants.
what
I
the
I'm
heck are
got
you
part of
talking
Big
about?
Ants. That's right. You can't stop us.
Now,
You
what
You can't
cannot
about
us.
stop us.
I'm
1
actually
million
a bug.
ants.
Did you guys just get sponsored by Big Ant? Yeah.
That's right.
what about
Big ant
uh,
pharma.
what about
Big
positive
ant farm.
microbes?
I like
Is it
that.
possible that they could vector a positive microbe?
I think so. I
Okay,
think so.
so
I think it's possible. Like for example, well, like hypothetically, let's say that you have, where was it?
maybe a
Pseudomonas.
lactobacillus or something.
Yeah, well, like for example, there are Pseudomonas that are huge parasites, and there are Pseudomonas that are great benefits for plants. And so potentially, yes. I could say that also it's possible, like there are plant viruses that are beneficial for plants sometimes, and sometimes you don't get the benefit until like the densovirus and the aphid wing thing we talked about earlier, certain triggers might have to occur. Like maybe the plant has to be stressed in a certain way, like drought, like in the way that drought stress would cause the issue. Maybe this virus, becomes active. Maybe it's a retrovirus that's in the genome of the plant. Otherwise, maybe it does nothing or has seemingly no effect. So sometimes it's very conditional, and I find that stuff really fascinating. Of course, not very easy to use in the field still, but yeah, I think that's an excellent take.
I will say in defense of myself, one of my plants didn't have any ants anywhere near it, and the other plant that did got. Yeah, I took the nuclear option. I went, I would say like chemical, but the stuff that they use is actually not too
Fire?
crazy.
Did you say fire?
Oh,
I
okay.
didn't
Give him a little,
didn't
give him a
I
little
thought
didn't
the
go
fire.
nuclear
nuclear. Didn't
option
take
was
the
take the
nuclear
plant outside
flame
and set
option.
it on fire.
Yeah, that's the nuclear option, I think.
But yeah, I felt like
Scorched
I've
earth.
used this stuff in the past for actual like we in the area in Southern California that I'm in, as clean as we can try and keep our house. There at some point will just be ants that get in because especially
Hey,
with the
other people
seasons
too.
changing, it yeah, they're I guess there's like a super colony. I think Matthew you described between like Mexico and Southern California. There's like some crazy number of ants.
All across the
And
West Coast, yeah, mega colony. Like I think it's Lasius niger ants in particular. Yeah, the little black garden ants you often see.
yeah, so they're you get little populations here and there, and this particular trap that I use, and I'll just say the actual brand because fucking I'm not sponsored by them. Tero, Tero. It's just like a little liquid bait, and you cut the little end off, you set them down, they walk
Yeah.
in, they take the stuff, and then it doesn't kill them instantly. They bring it back to the queen or whatever, and they spread it all throughout. Ants are actually, from what I understand, like pretty clean, as
Yeah,
far
very
as insects
hygienic.
go. So they don't like to have like stuff on them. But when they get this stuff, I think it's got like a little bit of sugar to like bait them, and they spread it across all their buddies. So it's like it doesn't just get the one that's impacted. They bring it all throughout the whole, and they rub up against each other and they try and clean each other off to get the stuff off of them. And it's very, very effective. I've seen it take out the populations that I've had multiple times in multiple seasons. So I know that it's effective, and I've already seen it starting to knock this population back quite a bit. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're entirely gone by the next couple of days. So that being said, yeah, not advocating for ants, but it was interesting that when I was looking up, just in a sort of, when
Sounds
we're,
like you're an ant bigot, actually.
yeah, fuck the man, fuck them ants.
Sounds
Uh,
like
Fuck
ant
ants.
genocide all of a
Okay.
sudden. So yeah, I'm
Oh yeah,
no
yeah. I
longer
don't
thinking
know.
you're a big
I don't.
ant
Yeah, man.
backer.
Big Ant Pharma ain't sponsoring me anymore, but
Yeah.
No.
yeah, the one thing though, I think Spartan did ask, can it vector a positive thing like microbe or like virus or whatever it is? And when I was Googling articles before I found that meta-analysis, probably one of the articles that meta-analysis cited did find that they were potentially vectoring like positive microbial benefits and things like that. So it was within the research. So I don't think that you're wrong to think that or ask that. And it was something that I do recall being reflected. I could probably search around and pull something up. But like I said, I think there's more interesting topics for us to continue on to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I guess my main point here is there's a lot of cool stuff out there, and there are implications for that knowledge if you have that context. And I think like Dr. Coco was saying earlier, uh, obviously you can get way into the weeds to things that aren't even like really applicable, but if you know enough and you know a lot of how these things interconnect, then there are some clever things you can pull off. They're
Yeah.
low tech but sophisticated, and I think that's my favorite like nexus for technology.
And
Cool.
I like to like really hit home the whole point. I think the whole moral of that story is that, every pest, no matter what it is, even if you think it's something not to worry about, could really be something to worry about because it could be a vector of something that's pretty nasty for your plant. So even besides, I hear it all the time about fungus gnats. Oh, they're no big deal. They're no big deal. I'm not worried about them. Well, maybe you should be because they can vector things just like aphids can.
They're no big deal until they are a big deal, which
I
Yeah.
kind of feel
can
the same
happen.
way oftentimes about aphids, to be honest with you, Spartan. Like if I get a couple aphids, I'm not gonna like flip out and run around like my pants are on fire. Um, but I won't let them get kind of crazy out of control either. You know, kind of depends on what that situation is. But yeah, maybe I should take that a little bit more seriously with even a few aphids.
I think it's like having an appreciation for like the discrete effects, right? Or sometimes the not so discrete, like with the fungus gnats and the vectoring. I think the big problem is that people can't like they can't like see it in their vision, like they can't like observe it happening. So it's very, it's out of sight, out of mind. If they're even aware of it, right, to begin with. But with aphids, it's like I think I agree with what Spartan's saying and what Dr. Coco is saying, where on the one hand, it's not going to immediately destroy everything you love. At least in cannabis, so far, we don't have a virus vector for aphids that's confirmed like that. But other crops, absolutely, I would be way worried. But even if you don't have that, aphids are great at like disrupting the immune system. Maybe they'll change the soil microbiome of your living soil crop. Just there are things they might not outright kill your plant, but the more you know, yeah, the more you like maybe will become a worrywart like me.
And I really
Maybe that's
believe
not a good
something
thing.
to that. Like, to not outright kill your plant. If your plant's really kind of struggling during the flowering period for whatever reason, I don't believe it's going to grow as good of cannabis as it would otherwise if it was sort of, kept humming along. So if it's under sort of like struggling under pest pressure, especially like I'm thinking like rice fruit aphids or something like that, like, or spider mites, it's not going to be able to produce as well, even if it stays alive and kind of powers through.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to look at it. It's like if it's a stressor and you just don't want to mount multiple stressors and like multiply them at the same time. So like if you're already beleaguered, then the introduction of like aphids is going to be like it's going to like multiply the force of impact. Whereas independently, maybe it's not a huge deal. You could easily write that. So that's the difference between having a solution and a dilemma, because solutions have problems and dilemmas don't have a clear solution. You gotta take a trade-off. Anyways,
The dilemma or problem?
I got lost a little. I'll have to re-listen
I
to that
got
one.
lost there. I think you might have said
I
solution.
bet you what he said made a fucking lot of sense. I just
no,
I
I
didn't.
said, yeah, problems have, yeah, you're right. Problems have solutions. Dilemmas do not
Dilemmas
have
don't.
solutions. Don't
Yes,
have
that's
clear
between a
solutions.
problem and a dilemma. Gotcha.
Yes, yes. But you knew what I meant even when
I
I
did.
didn't. Yeah, so that's the thing. You want to give, and that's just life advice, free life advice. Give your enemies dilemmas, not problems.
There you go.
That's right.
I had a little sort of offshoot thing. It's not research related, but I felt a little bad because I didn't shout him out last week. I felt kind of like a local celebrity. I got invited to an event where I was a judge locally here. And so I got to do, well, and I later found out that all the other judges paid to be judges. So they paid for their little judge kit. And I showed up, just admittedly, my wife worked with this individual, but they've found my podcast and got a copy of the book, and they're like really into the show. So they invited me out to taste some of their stuff, and I'm actually smoking on some of it right now. So shout out to Simple Life Cult, and I'm smoking on some of the Dream Sour, and I've had some of the Granddaddy Peyton, as well as Once in a Blue Moon. I really liked the last two.
Jack just disappeared.
That reminds me.
Oh, he's
There he
back.
is. I think he's
Go
muted.
ahead, Spartan. Yeah, no, I had a neighbor
Oh, okay.
calling into my house, and I just had to tell him I'm busy right now.
No, I was just saying that reminds me. I'm smoking some shout out to Blue Kiss Gardens, and I believe this is outdoor, but it's Moonbow, and I'm enjoying it. Only had a couple bowls, and I'm just sitting here and waiting in between because it's getting me feeling pretty good. Just a couple bowls.
That's the best. We changed it up. We've been actually really enjoying some stuff from a brand my wife, when she was in the legal market, actually started. So it's cool to see that even though she's left, it's still running strong, and we got some of the flower, and it's really good, like enjoyable, even as like a home grower, to get stuff from the legal market and be able to genuinely enjoy this. Something I'm always happy with. But the Granddaddy Peyton we smoked a little bit last night, and she like took one hit and she was just like, she's a heavy smoker too, and she was real stoned. So it was it's always fun when you change it up and have something different, and it really rings that bell. So I'm always excited to get some good homegrown that was generously gifted to me, and from a listener of the show. And it was cool. It was a bigger event than I was expecting. I thought maybe there'd be like 10, 15, 20 people. It was probably like 60 to 100 people, live music, like pizza, like, oh man, it was a fucking great time. So I had a really good time. They had like these it started out, you got joints that were numbered, and I always like Spartan dry puff it. And so I'm like dry puffing, I'm telling people, I'm like, before you light it up, like take some dry puffs, like you can get the flavor on it. And so I'm like trying to get my impressions before I even start smoking them. And yeah, it was a really good time. It was just
That
like
sounds
a
like
lot
a
of
good
fun.
Make sure let people know, Jack, that I'm also available for judging if they need that. Like,
Yeah, I
just
think
saying.
I'll let them know. I'll let them
Yeah, me
know.
too,
We'll
for
bring the
that
whole
matter.
growing with my
Yeah,
fellow
right,
growers
right, Matthew.
down.
Like, hey,
Simple Life
like,
Cult.
they need extras.
That's right.
We'll do a growing with my fellow growers judge sesh on the
There we
West
go.
Coast.
And he'll make the
We should
pizza.
set that up. I mean, we could get, listeners to just bring it, and we'll like declare who's got the best listener sample here in SoCal and I'd be down. Sit
I'm
around,
super
smoke
down.
people's bud all day.
It's
Dr. Coco's Cannabis and Pizza World Tour Farmers Cup
There you
2025.
go. I'll make a trophy. All right, I'll make
If
a
you're an
trophy that
entrepreneur,
we
you
can
just
give
got to get a
away.
pizza food truck for that event, and you will make bank.
That's right.
I will say Doc's pizza was better than the pizza at this event, although the pizza at this event was really good as well. But Doc's definitely very
Oh, I'll
up
make
there.
pizza.
Skilled
Yeah, I'll make
craftsman.
pizza. Everybody's got to bring, I don't know, what's going to be the entry? Is give me like a quarter ounce, a half ounce.
Bring your own
I'll make
toppings.
pizza.
Have everybody bring their own toppings.
We make a base, just like a cheese or something, and then like a white pizza
it.
for the I don't know.
All right,
Yeah,
we'll put it on
we'll
the
figure it out.
calendar.
We'll definitely link something up. It's kind of honestly surreal that they're like, you see the number. There's like 100 with us currently, roughly every night, and 99 at the current moment. But usually 1,000 on YouTube and about 1 to 2,000 every episode on the podcast platform. So that actually translates to real people, and then you get to meet them in real life. And then
Yeah.
even at the event, like there were some people that hadn't heard about the show, and people that like used to grow that are thinking about getting back into it. I'm like, I'll give you some seeds. Like let's get it going, dude. And he's like, my own buddy's giving me some grow equipment. Like I'm getting back into things. And it's fun because some of these people are, much my elder and have been, around for a long time and been smoking for a long time. But to give them the gift of being able to grow their own after like, using something for like 30, 40, 50 years and have never grown it before. And
Yep.
to be able to like show them like, dude, look, it's not the easiest thing in the whole world. It's going to be, there's some challenges along with it, but you'll definitely learn a lot, and it's a lot of fun, and you can definitely grow like the best stuff, not just like as
Super
good, like
rewarding.
better.
I mean, it's super rewarding. And as like a hobby, there are a few other hobbies that sort of check off as many boxes as being a home grower. So for sure. I'm gonna have to get out of here, guys. I got an event I have to get ready for and get off to a dinner. So I hate to keep sneaking out early on you on Sundays. I'll try not to do this, but I'm not entirely in control of my own schedule all the time.
Hey man, you're a celebrity, man. We understand.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Yeah,
and he's
agents,
also
want more Dr.
people said,
Coco.
book me for things, and I was like, I
We're
told
gonna
them
have
not
to,
to do
yeah.
that anymore.
also being married, you got a happy wife, happy
Yeah,
life.
exactly.
Keep all the
Yeah.
schedule appointments kept.
Exactly. But I really enjoyed
That's what
it.
you
I want
get
to
for
wish
being known
everybody
for pizza.
a happy Thanksgiving. And yeah, enjoy whether you are sort of here in the States celebrating Thanksgiving or not. Like, I'm grateful for all of you, and I'm happy to be a part of this show. So thanks, Jack, Spartan, Matthew, for being here. I'm sorry to leave you guys short-handed this evening. Everybody out there in chat, much grower love, and yeah, I'll see you next week.
Have a
Thank you,
good one.
Doc.
Grow love,
And
man. Have a good
he let me know that he
Thanksgiving.
was only going to be here for the first hour at the top, and I totally spaced out. But thank you for staying, Doc, and giving us the time and hanging. Great chat.
Absolutely. Grower love, everyone.
Yeah, I'm actually looking
so
forward
if
to
so if you
Thanksgiving.
want this pizza and cannabis cup chat, you know what to do. You got to spam pizza emoji in the chat.
Oh, come on.
Helps
We
us
have to make
out.
one adjustment, Matthew.
Helps us know.
Matthew, you of all people know that words matter, and let's put the order right. Cannabis and pizza, not
But
pizza.
what we do? No, we got a tree and pizza emoji. I think, right? Because that's the.
I like it. I like it. That's a
Yeah.
good compromise. I like it.
Yeah, man.
But I agree, Spartan.
I
Cannabis has to be first, and then pizza.
think so. I think so.
And we can also do non-pizza things for people that are trying to pretend like we're healthy, like myself, even though I just gained 5 pounds back after getting on the unhealthy train for a little bit. Like I was talking about, happy wife, happy life. We went out to some meals and, occasionally eat a little bit more and better than you should. But that's just life. But yeah, I'm really thankful to Simple Life Cult on Instagram, Simple Life Cultivators. They're a cool group. Really good guy who runs it over there, and had a great time at that event. And it may be a reoccurring thing, to my understanding. So I'll let the people know if and when I'm going to go to that again.
Now tell me, Jack, did the person that you ranked the highest personally, were they the winner at the end?
It was more like a tasting event than like a
Oh,
cup.
okay.
Like, because I think the person who put the event on grew a lot of the product themselves, and they maybe sourced a few products from other local growers.
Oh, that's a smart thing to do. And bring people in and taste test and see what their opinion is. Then you can help strain
And it
select.
wasn't even like it was funny getting more into the event. You had a little lanyard and it had these little cards, and I didn't really look at it until we started smoking the joints. And then I'm like, what, how do I rate it? And then they like pull out the thing in your lanyard, and it said, fuck, marry, kill. And it was like, fuck, like
That's funny.
I'll use this like, a little, like it's all right. I'd probably use it, do it a couple times. And then like marry, it's like I'd use this all the time. And then like kill, like I fucking get rid of it. Like I don't want it. Kind of thing. I wish I would have kept one of the cards to give you the exact terminology they used. But then there was like a few dots at the bottom, and it would say like, what does it remind you of? And like, does it smell like gassy or fruity? Or there was like 5 or 6 different things that you could like bubble in. And then you could write like a just general note at the very bottom and like a blank box. So it was a really kind of a cool way to give some feedback to
Yeah,
some of the
that's
local
awesome.
growers and just get to
Caregivers in
taste.
Michigan or caregivers anywhere else. That would be a great thing to include every time you grow a new strain, to include a little card like that and have them rate it, and then that'll help you make your selections. That would be really, really nice. Maybe
It's a
say
smart
say, hey, I'll give you a discount next time if you bring this back. Give them a reason to bring it back too, because
free
that's
gram
important.
on the next order if
There you
you
go.
fill out a
Yeah.
survey or whatever, like this survey card. And you get feedback that genuinely, from what I've heard in the caregiver process, it seems like a real caregiver process over in Michigan, how we kind of had here in California for a long time, where you would grow stuff, your patients would try it, and there people would be like, that one thing really worked for me, grow more of that or keep growing that, please, please. Like that's the only one.
Yeah.
And so you get a lot of that. And then like growers, we like to try new stuff all the time. So if you've got that person, you're usually trying to keep stuff around and maybe try and introduce them to new things that might be able to replace that one, because you introduce them to that one. So maybe there's a chance that you'll introduce them to another one that works just as well. But sometimes people do get really hooked on the one, and maybe you can even give them a cut, get them growing. It's like if they're capable of doing it. But there's so much possibility in the community if we just are open-minded and try and be generous and kind of thoughtful like that. And these types of events, I think, can be a great way to educate the grower. He was very humble. He's like, come taste my mids, is what he kept saying. And the stuff was really fire. He's like, I think he was like, I've been doing this for years, like really dialing in like my living soil. And I feel like I'm finally at the point where I want people to like try my stuff. And he invited a few other local growers, and it was cool, man. It was really, really cool. Like there was this one dude who's been growing the same cut of OG since 2013, and he moved here in like 2011 and started growing in 2012, and just got that OG cut in 2013. That's a decade. He's been growing the same cut, and I've fucking got a joint of it somewhere over here. But yeah, it was pretty good.
That's awesome. Half of these events that I mean, more than half of the events that I like, the reason I like them is just the people. I don't have to have anything, even there doesn't have to have a thing to purchase there. Doesn't have to. I would go there just for the people. So I try to get out to them. I just went to an event up in Lansing at Third Eye Craft Fair. And even though I was only going to be able to be there for a couple hours at the tail end of it, I don't care. I still showed up and it was cool to see everybody. Love that stuff. XYZ Vector's asking if we're going to open the Zoom up. He wants to show off what the auto grow produce Borg weed for the win.
Yeah, I'll send the link to the chat. We've got a small panel tonight, so I think it's only right that we open it up to our growers for Thanksgiving, little grow love.
Yeah, and on the point of community, it's funny because you just went to an event. I went to an event yesterday. It was the Farmers Cup Cal Prime Cultivation launch party. So they had on display
I was invited to
and
that,
to,
by the
and
way,
to
at the
you
event.
were.
Yeah, I was supposed to be there. They're like, "Why aren't you here?" Like a couple of guys I met at the event, the Simple Life Cult event, were like, I thought you were gonna be there." And my wife actually got sick, and I spaced out. I was taking care of her yesterday, but she's doing much better now. But yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead. The
No,
Farmers
no,
Cup guys
no.
were at
I was
this event.
curious. No, I'm glad that you. No, I'm glad you mentioned that because that means you're likely to go to the next one and we'll meet again. But
Yes. Well, they had
this was
Donnie
for
Burger
Donnie.
hash. Shout out to Spartan and everybody who loves Donnie Burger, because
Oh
he
Yeah, it
yeah.
was
busted out.
good.
I was
Let me
raving
just
about
say it
how
was good.
Donnie Burger is like the bomb, and he's like, "Oh, I got some of that right here," and busted open. I was like, "Yes, that's exactly what I was looking for."
Nice.
And it was also they had something called push. They had push pop and permanent marker, which they're
Permanent
now
marker, I've been
calling
hearing
perm pop.
things.
Both popular. Both of those strains are popular. And you're saying there's a cross. They're calling it perm pop.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Those are like really modern. I'd say within the last year or two have taken off quite a bit.
Yeah,
Tell us
just
about
like
them. Tell me about them.
I haven't had
Um,
permanent marker. I'm just
the
hearing a lot of good things about it.
It's frosty as hell. I mean, it to me almost looks like a modern purple punch or gelato or something where it's just like caked out trichomes. I've only had a few samples of it and it was good, kind of loud, a little gassy.
The Donny Burger was really good, and also I'll have to say it was also super frosty. And um, they had like they gave a bunch of people like big ass joints with a filter, a wood tip, and like a gram of I want to say it was hash.
Yeah. I saw some of that. I smoked some of that hash, I think.
Yeah. Infused, yeah. 1.5 gram flour, one concentrate, 2.5 grams total weight. Yep.
That
Donny
group is
Burger
cool. The
Podcast.
Farmer's Cup, I think is what you're saying, is their name or something like that. I think
Yes, yeah, it was great. It was that one guy was telling me, well, actually one of the cultivators was telling me that they were trying to like get rid of the last of the hash oil from the joint, like just put it in a bong, and like they kept blasting it, and it kept working. So they weren't even able to kill it, all of them together, all those veteran smokers. So I guess it's lasts a long time. You can get a lot
highly
out of it.
potent.
Highly potent.
So they're saying, Rocinante. I don't know if I say your name right, but that just sounds good.
Rocinante, yeah.
Okay. Permit marker
The
is
workhorse.
biscotti, which I like, times jealousy, which I like, times sherb, which So it sounds like something I might like. And then Debbie Hayes, shout out Debbie Hayes. Went out to my favorite spot in Michigan here, Winewood Organics, Ann Arbor. Got some orange push pop. Oh, yeah, I've had the orange push pop. Very orangey. There's the link for everybody. It just popped it up. I just saw it.
I did forget to send it. I was chit chatting and I copied it from my Instagram and I just forgot to send it over. I didn't write up my normal, but I will warn you, join with a name that I will recognize you from, like your Instagram name or your YouTube name. Don't come with your what I would call your government name that you're gonna have like on your driver's license. Come with the name like XYZ Vector, who's currently joining as XYZ Vector. So I will allow them to join.
You have
So
been
we
warned.
avoid the trolls because some people have unfortunately let some, you know, nefarious people come on and show some messed up stuff. But flashing back to community, one of the reasons I don't want people to, because some of the things that were said on one of the shows that I like were racist and really fucked up. So I don't like it when, like, obviously the show's not like that. It was just some random troll.
Right.
And like one of the guys that I met at this event was like just telling me about he's from LA and like his experience going through like living in LA through the last 50 or 60 years and how much it's changed. Like uh even like desegregation of schools, like living through that. I learned about that in history class. He fucking lived it. So it was nice to get firsthand experience from somebody like that and over a joint and just like hearing somebody's experience in beautiful state. XYZ Vector, what are we looking at here? I think you're muted.
Yeah, we're not hearing you, man. Looking good though.
It does look good. I see some nice frosty purple buds.
Looks beautiful. Hi, guys.
XYZ, you're still muted if you're talking with us. We can't hear you. Cheers to Dog Doctor who jumped in as well.
For love, everybody.
Cheers,
Good to see
doctor.
you.
Good to see you, man.
XYZ, it looks
see
like maybe
you.
you're working on some stuff over here. We're just seeing, we can't hear you still, by the way. XYZ Vector. You might want to jump out and jump
Cool.
back in if you aren't able to unmute yourself. Because right now we can just see your screen. We can't hear you.
Yeah, looks like we're looking at your computer screen, like your irrigation. It's pretty cool. 70 degrees Fahrenheit, 65% humidity. Oh,
It just stopped the share. But yeah, XYZ, maybe jump out and then jump back in and see if that works if you're not able to unmute yourself because we still cannot hear you. While we have a little bit of dead air, I did have one other topic written down other than things that we've been chit-chatting about. XYZ just left us, so hopefully they come back and we'll get the audio. Zoom's weird, man. Sometimes technology, I should say, is weird. Some everywhere I go, and I won't even say it's like a cannabis thing or a food thing or a big retail. Every single place I go, it seems like the system is fucked up. Their checkout system, like, oh man, this thing is down. And like they break all the fucking time in every industry I go to. I'm like, man, if somebody makes a good point of sale system or just like good tech, you guys can make a killing because it seems like most people's tech is like outdated and really shit at this point and just crashing and slow and not working well.
well, yeah. The problem with businesses is they'll invest when they need it at the beginning when they first start out, and then they're not going to get anything else until it absolutely breaks.
You're right. XYZ Vector. Oh, it looks like you're connecting again. I thought I heard that was probably Dog Doctor that I heard the zipper.
Oh, that was my zipper. I'm sorry.
No worries. XYZ, it looks like you unmuted this time. I can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah, the man is in the house.
You are back. It looks like we just got EOS webcam utility.
No, it's connecting the webcam to the USB. There we go.
Okay, so this is purple Urkel you're seeing right here. I'm gonna do a
Did you get the cut or is
quick.
this like grown
I'm
from
not at
seed?
home. I'm 2,000 miles away. Yes, yes, yes. We got purple Urkel here, and it's gonna take a second for it to update. But and then we got Tao's Amy Aces over here in the corner, right there.
They look beautiful, buddy. Big
Yeah,
buds.
Oh, they're getting fat.
I ain't
Yeah.
Amy
seen
Aces is a
plants in over
chunker.
a month.
This is all remote for over a month, you said?
Yeah, well, it's been pretty much remote for the most of the time, but I get home a couple days every month.
Nice.
Yeah, well, remember I showed off the system along about 3 months ago when I first started, and you guys like, oh yeah, that's cool. That'd be great for the infirm to grow weed. And it's a completely automatic system. It makes its own newts. It does everything automatically.
That's pretty cool.
And guess what? Oh, it's day 70 of flower. Sorry. A few hours ago, it's day 69. Damn it.
Yeah.
That's why she's all swelled up.
I just harvested one at
Nice
day
and happy.
69.
But yeah, I mean, it works. But they're looking good. They're ready to harvest. I'm gonna get home tomorrow, hopefully, and cut them down. They're done.
Yeah.
How many times you defoliate it if it's not
One
during
time.
the one time? All of the rest just automated and dude, it's amazing. Looks great.
Yeah.
Really.
What
Well,
day do you defol or did you on this time?
I defoliated way back in day I think it was day 4 of flowering. I cut them. I topped them back at day 26 of veg. And there used to be 6 plants. Now there's only 3.
Were there males or did something happen?
Males. Most of them were males. One purple Urkel got just decided it wanted to overgrow the tank, so I had to get rid of it. After it stopped the bolt, it was reaching up towards the lights. So
Where's the
and the
purple Urkel
lights,
from?
it's from I bought it when I bought cow seeds, and they gave me a bunch of extra packs. You know how they do that when you buy a seed, they give you the freebies. The purple
Yep.
Urkels were freebies.
Oh, okay, interesting. Maybe like a S1. So I say Urkel is notoriously like a squatty plant. So when I hear that it's like outgrowing your tent, that just shows you that S1s are not the same as the clone or whatever cross, maybe back cross or what. I don't know how exactly they spread it because so often they just label something purple Urkel and then people grow it and call it purple Urkel, and it's an entirely
Yeah, I
different plant
don't.
than it's not your fault. This is just a common sort of
No,
thing that
some
happens in
of
the
it
community.
is my fault because I thought it was purple Urkel, but it might not be. I don't know. I
Because like
just go by
purple
what they
Urkel is
say.
a cut. It's a clone. What is known
No,
kind
they're
of
all from seeds.
yeah. So it's typically called like a clone only in some circles or whatever. Like you're not um going to come across like the purple Urkel, so to speak, as a seed. That's why I was saying it's probably like a purple Urkel S1 or selfed, where they took purple Urkel, reversed it, and then pollinated another copy of purple Urkel, and then gave you those seeds as a freebie. And that's why you're seeing in that case, you see a lot of the, grandparent expression and parent expression, and it will be a little bit more diverse than just like growing a clone that is not going to stretch as much.
Question: even if
Yeah.
you make it feminized seeds from the clone, you will always get, of course, it's different seeds. You can always get different phenotypes, even
Yeah,
if it
so
comes from a clone. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Makes
Spartan
sense.
did it
Sorry.
with the Mac 1, and he's very, very familiar with Mac 1. He's grown it for a long time. Michigan has had it for a long time, and a lot of his guys in the circle have grown it for a long time, to my understanding. And you could maybe tell us a little bit more, Spartan, about I think you guys sequence had a greenhouse where you grew Mac 1 side by side with the Mac 1
Yeah.
S1.
Yeah, I think that's the best controlled experiment that we could really do with it, was in a greenhouse outside, the S1 from seed versus the clone from clone. And they're two very different plants.
Well, whatever it is, I'm happy it's frosty, and I've never ever grown anything in my environment that expressed the anthocyanin like this does.
Yeah, that's nice. It looks
It's
nice.
very purple. At least it's true to its name. If it's going to be called purple Urkel, it probably was using the genetic material of purple Urkel, and it does turn purple. That is one of the strains that is in 50 strains of purple. So this is a beautiful example of how purple Urkel can be grown. Red Setter Farm, I think, still grows purple Urkel. I could be mistaken, or maybe it's another GDP or something like that. I know he grows one of the
Yeah,
squatty purples.
GDP, I believe.
So, are any of you going to MJ BizCon?
I don't think I'm pretty sure I'm not.
I am definitely not.
Oh, okay.
No.
Well, you cross paths with the doctor, Jack. So, and you too, Zentinel. I'll leave him with the sample if he doesn't take it all, because I'm gonna meet him up there next week or the following week,
Good stuff. Always
and
like we
I'll
were
make
talking about.
sure to pack a little bit of extra.
Always
I'm
good.
very proud of that purple plant
Badass,
though,
man.
because I think it's going to be my best yet, and I've only been doing this for a year, so.
It's amazing if you have good instruction, what you can pull off in some of your first crops. I've seen some people absolutely kill it right out of the gate with good genetics, good instruction, modern equipment. You're not fighting like an HPS like a lot of people were for a long time. So mitigating that heat, like if you're going under LEDs and you've got good instruction, you're giving the plant proper nutrition and environments decently dialed in, you're picking decent genetics, I think you're doing a lot of stuff right. And it shows that plant is frosty as hell. It looks like you've been growing for a decade plus. A lot of people that have been growing for a decade plus can't produce a plant like that. So I think that you're definitely taking a lot of good instruction and putting it to good use, because you got healthy plants, just like Dog Doctor and Okie Grower, who jumped in. I think Dog
Let's
Doctor
see
was with
what
us
they got.
first. Dog Doc, do you want to give us a little walkthrough? I'll give you the spotlight, and then we'll go to Okie Grower
Go.
next.
Sure. So this is my first time topping an autoflower. So far, she's behaving like a normal plant.
Oh,
I'm pretty happy with it. She's about a month now, something like this, same time as this. This no training at all, just leaf bending, and she's in flower already. Different genetics, although, but still, I'm pretty curious to see. This looks like it's gonna be a pretty big monster. I mean,
yeah, that's nice. That's a lot of tops already, man.
yeah, pretty curious. These are two autoflowers also. Since we have guests, let me show you quick how the rest
Oh,
it is.
wow, I like
This is the
that.
fog, remember? Full defoliation. She grew. I flip. What's the date today? Today it's
19.
19th. So she is, let's say, I don't like to call the first 3-4 days in flower. So she's about 14 days into flower.
Okay.
So 18 days since I flipped the lights, but the first days I don't count as flowering days still. She has grown from here to here. The light was at 80. I just pulled it at 100 2 days ago. I don't know if it's too much light, but they seem praying and happy. I mean,
Yeah.
Or day 18 from flip, I would have guessed like 21 or later. They're getting good early bud development. So this is going to be a great crop as long as everything stays healthy and happy.
I hope so.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
pretty
looking
even
good,
canopy,
doctor.
well filled in, looks green and healthy.
It's all four different genetics. I'm trying my best. Oh, I'm doing.
Lots
not
of bud
looking-
sites in there. I mean, you're doing when you're growing multiple genetics like that for that even of a canopy. The back canopy is the taller point, which is like you're not. I don't know if you have access to that back panel or not, or if it's up against the wall.
I have, but I don't have.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah. See, like
all the plumbing.
that
Yeah,
doesn't really
Hey,
bother me too much, to be honest. If those last plants in the back are a little bit taller, as
I
long as
mean,
like you've got it all
it's-
controlled underneath the bottom of the
if it
canopy.
was here, yeah, if it was here, it would shadow the other sides. But it's really that corner over there and that one over there. Just
Exactly. And
the
that's where
the
you usually
rest,
get lower light levels. So getting the benefit of the reflection off the walls of the tent is,
dude.
great
The
stuff.
light levels on this, they are pretty even. Look,
Hey,
this
Doc,
was
I got a question for you. I was
please.
looking at your plants earlier in the grow when you first started them because you're showing them off. They look so
Sure.
much better now. Is your environment getting a lot better for you?
This one,
Oh, all
which
of them.
sides?
All of them look sad. They weren't growing
There
hardly at
were.
all.
You're talking,
Now they're just
but
big plants.
in this room,
I don't
in this
know.
closet. This
I
one,
don't know.
there was summertime, the end of the hot days. There was
Yes.
still a lot of hot. So, like for instance, the tropical tangy that I grew and that came out now the second run, she came so different. I think was that mainly. Apart from that, I didn't change anything. It's just the temperatures instead of being 35 inside the tents. Now they are 26 to 28.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
much more ideal for the plant.
Temperatures, everything.
And that is pretty much the only thing I changed, because the rest I have it all pretty much the same. The
One of
lights, the everything. Sorry.
one of my mentors who grows a strain J1, he actually shared the cut with me, and I grew it for a while myself. But it would definitely change in the summertime. It went from like really piney, like sweet piney, to like more like pencil shavings, like cedar pine mix. Like if you've ever opened up a pencil sharpener after you've sharpened a pencil, it kind of had more of that smell in the summertime, where in the wintertime it was more like Christmas tree, like almost like a fir. If you're from Spartan's area, that smell probably pretty well. Or if you've ever bought a real Christmas tree, then yeah, that smell.
That alpha pinene, man.
It's the
Man,
bomb.
I love that, man.
What
This
is
is
this
a
one?
jealousy. This is a jealousy. I did not top this one. I Wait, sorry.
Jealousy S1. Who's it
I
from?
have no idea. It's from the Zamnesia, so they just say jealousy. I selected
You're not alone,
4
XYZ. See,
branches.
everybody gets them. I've grown like Blue Dream. That was Blue Dream is a clone, and I got Blue Dream from seed, and I did the same thing. I called it Blue Dream. So don't feel bad. I wasn't trying to call you out earlier. I'm just always curious, because whenever I hear jealousy, and like Spartan hears jealousy, and he's like, "Oh, I like jealousy," but then like that phenotype of that Zamnesia seed of jealousy is probably a different jealousy than the one that he's thinking about when we're talking about that thing. So I just like to clarify it so that we realize that we're talking about potentially two different things, or just legitimately two different things with the same
Well,
name.
Well,
This
my
grew.
point is that his environment changed and it changed his whole grow. His
It ch-
grow's
ch-
now like, damn.
It
Oh yeah, that'll
changes
happen if you
everything.
dial it in. If it's too hot, the plants aren't going to be happy. And 25 Celsius to like 30 3 Celsius, I'd say, like on the high end, but probably like 25 to 30 Celsius is pretty ideal range for cannabis.
She grew so different. I'm
Okay,
very
good.
curious. Still dance, still everything, but the colors, the smell, this is way more fruity. I can smell tangerine, not orange now, tangerine. And the last one, after a couple of weeks, the fruity smell was gone. That's why I hate summer for growing. The only reason I grow in summer indoors is because I cannot do outdoor growing. Otherwise, I definitely would not grow indoor. Otherwise, you have to have a big AC where I live.
It's funny you said that about the orange versus like the tangerine, because when I grew Sour 76, it was a tester from Humboldt Seeds. I had 3 phenos. I had like one was lemon, one was lime, and one was what I called kind of like the better tangy. It was like tangy, but a little bit more punch. But it smelled and tasted exactly like tangy, just a little bit more potent. And it really actually smelled like a tangerine, not an orange. So like whatever extra complexities make a tangerine, not an orange, it
Yeah,
had. And then when I grew the cuts of it in the winter, it was just kind of a more generic citric orange. And I think even I switched from CMH to LED. And so that was also a big factor. So I had a lot more climate control, and I was growing it in a cooler environment with the LED and in the winter than when I was growing at CMH during the summertime. It was a lot hotter and it was a lot more tangerine. So I think sometimes those hotter hots can actually bring out certain uh, terpene expressions. Like Hawaii gets hot as fuck. It's a tropical island, but some of the best cannabis comes from greenhouse and outdoor grows in Hawaii and other places like the equator where it gets way warmer than the whatever we recommend getting our tents to. But some of the fire comes from that environment potentially, and high humidity even.
Yeah, the VBT is much lower in those hotter atmospheres.
yeah. I tried in the summertime. I raised my humidity, but dude, I cannot raise it above 80. Even 80, I'm already playing
Oh,
and
that's
gambling a
super
lot.
dangerous.
No,
Like
no,
you're playing with
I'm
fire.
gambling a lot and playing with fire. I was lucky. No bud raw, no mildew, no nothing. I think it's because I have a lot of air going in and coming out of the tents,
That's
and
huge.
and I think that's the reason why I don't get bud
Do you do
raw and stuff like
carbon
that.
filter too?
I do. I can explain what I do. It's easier since the camera is on. I extract from the tents to the air, filtering the air from the tents outside, and then I filter it from the big room outside.
But that's a carbon filter right there, right?
There's a carbon filter in there, and there's a carbon filter on each tent.
Yeah, so the carbon filters are also, if you're cycling a lot of air through there, they're purifying or cleaning up the air a bit. So although it's not ideal to have 80% RH, the reason you're able to get away with it is because you strip the lower canopy, you've got them, a bunch of airflow, and also the temperature was high enough to get the VPD in a range that it worked. But again, that's some people get away with it. Like the Jungle Boys are actually kind of known. That's why they call their grow the Jungle Boys. Like they run it hot and humid, and a lot of people that have run it more hot and humid have found in certain VPD ranges that can actually work. But it's to a point. You obviously can't have 100% humidity, but yeah, and especially if you could just dial it back at the last few weeks of flower, that can be another thing that will make it more bearable for getting a crop that doesn't have bud rot or mold or mildews and things like that.
It's
And
playing with fire, but sorry.
one more PSA. If you're running high humidity, them carbon filters lose effectiveness. Just let you know.
It's like when you use the humidifier, they get all fucked up because of something. I don't know what it is, but it's probably the same. Is that the reason?
I'm not 100% familiar with that. I think maybe the
I
carbon
think
gets.
the water in the air like degrades it, essentially.
Yeah, it reduces the effectiveness because what it does is it clogs up the pores of the carbon. And
Gotcha.
carbon works off the fact that it has so much surface area, it literally attracts all the molecules to it.
You can bust those things open, and like I've seen people like either set them out in the sun or like bake it to essentially get the moisture out of them to make them more effective again. You could also buy activated carbon and dump it out and then pour in fresh activated carbon into them to make them effective. My grow even did a video a long time ago of a shoebox carbon filter that he made that because like you're talking about the surface area, he used like a shoebox, filled the entire bottom of it, and then like a filter and then, runs air through it or across it. You'd have to actually watch the video to get a better description, but
I saw somebody throwing fireworks at it.
Well, we use carbon filters a lot in our chemical processes, and when they get wet, you have to dump them or remediate it. So that's the reason.
I want to get Okie Grower to walk us around his grow real quick and give him a chance to show off his garden before Spartan gets running here in the next 5.
Up no sips.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, looks good. Are these city pickers?
Yeah,
sir.
Yeah,
pickers.
man.
And the 2x4 is a little bit bigger than a 2x4, but so one thing I was wanting to ask, so this is a male in here,
Yeah.
and will it pollinate the pre-flowers on the females?
No.
Yes.
Really? You think
Yeah.
so?
You can pollinate a veg plant.
Okay.
Yeah.
You can pollinate a veg plants?
Yes. I know people who
So-
make seeds with their veg plants.
You mean if I want to make seeds, I cannot have even veg plants?
If your veg plants are
What?
sexually mature enough that they're showing pre-flower, they can be pollinated. If they're from seed and they're a few weeks old, you don't have anything to worry about.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Gotcha.
Well, 'cause I was
What I'm
wondering,
referring to is like if you keep a cut, like if you have like Spartan Grown has had Gorilla Glue for years, and I bet you if you go into his veg space and look at his Gorilla Glue, there's probably some little pistils or stigmas that are poking out of it, even in veg. And if you pollinated that, you get, and not a large amount of seeds, but I'm talking like between like 10 and 1 in 10, like depending on how large the plant is, just like a few at each node site.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
yeah, so that's what I was wondering if, so I was wanting to make a few seeds, but not a whole bunch. So I was thinking about, because I have a sunroom on the back of my house, and I was gonna just like take the top off and put it in a peat plug and put it on out back and collect some pollen off of it. Then do a couple branches that way.
It's a good way to do it. I like it.
Definitely doable. Males, you don't need a whole lot, but I'd make sure that the male is mature enough before you, well, even in the plug, I guess you could get it to throw pollen, but I'd probably wait until it is a little bit more developed.
This one's got balls, man.
They look beautiful, buddy.
What light cycle is this under right now?
18.6. This thing started popping
Expressing
balls
it.
quick, yeah.
You're expressing an 18.6. Wow.
Males are more likely to do that, especially if they're root bound.
Yeah, and they're in
Yeah,
the
well,
plants.
They were, well, yeah, there's 3 in this one sip, but they were in like quarter-gallon pots,
Okay.
and they were looking really nasty and deficient before I got them into the sips. Now
That
they're
might
looking
have
a
been
whole
enough.
lot better than they were.
Oh, I could see that happening. Yeah, I could totally see that
Yeah,
happening.
They
And they'd
basically
be
flipped
like,
them to flower and then they stretched.
yeah, they
Almost
gotta
twice
get
the size of
their.
the other ones. That's nice.
That's a nice big fat leaf there you got.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just a little 2x4. It's rainbow sherbert, and then this is blueberry squealer, which is blueberry muffin crossed to blueberry train mac.
I have the blueberry muffin seeds there. I've been put to pop it for a while.
It's the
Everybody
blueberry
talks
squealer
wonders.
from Brandon Russ.
No, the squealer's from OK Cal. It's the blueberry train mac. That's part of the cross is from Brandon.
Okay. Yeah, I was like, that's the one place that I usually hear blueberry train mac is from Brandon Russ. So cool stuff.
Yeah, and that's growing the sips with the smart carbon.
Oh yeah, man. Same way I do it.
Simple, working good.
Do you flower in that same tent, other than your males?
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, that's what I was gonna cut them out before I go in the flower and collect pollen off him in my sunroom out back.
Nice. I like it, man. That's gonna give him room to spread out. You'll be able to fill out that whole tent.
Yeah, there's another little one back here. And then I think this one might be a male too. You can see. Hard to see. But
I do want to give it over to Spartan Grown for a minute here so he can give his final thoughts and shout outs before he gets running on over to the Michigan Bros Grow Show here in about 14 minutes.
Oh, thanks, Jack. Thanks everybody who came on the panel to show their grow. It's I was over there nose deep in my monitor trying to get as close as I could to see if I could see the sex on that grow.
We were both for.
Cheers, chat. It's always great hanging out with you guys, and it's always good going to these shows because I always feel like I left learning something. Even me, I don't pretend to know everything, and it seems like every show I walk away learning something new. So I don't know. It's always a positive thing. You always go away with something. So love you guys. We'll see you next week. I'm going on to the Michigan Bros Grow Show. We'll see you guys in like 15. Keep
Cheers,
going, everybody.
Spartan.
Have a good one,
Bros love,
Spartan.
buddy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, Spartan.
Sorry to cut you off there, Okie Grower. Do you want to tell us about those last few plants?
yeah, it's just the two rainbow sherbert and yeah, blueberry squealers. Thinking this one's a male. And I'll probably end up getting cut out. And then I'm gonna take a clone off of this male to collect some pollen.
Were they
And these will
regular
stand
seeds?
out. And
Sorry.
when
If they were regular seeds.
yeah, they're all regs.
Okay. I was wondering why so many of them would be females. Makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you kept it same strain per each city picker.
Yeah. And I got rainbow sherbert in one city picker, then the blueberry squealer in the other.
Did they all make it? They all survive, or did you plant more seeds and then these are the ones that made it?
So I planted 4 of the rainbow sherbert, ended up with these 2. I think I planted 5 of the blueberry squealer and ended up with 3.
Not bad. Not bad. And at least you got a couple females there, and you'll be able to do what you want with the males. And it's not a total loss. Like many people, that's like a catastrophe if they have a male that hangs around a little too long. They're expecting a
Yeah.
female.
So always plant a
You-
couple of.
You looking for something particular to breed, or you just having fun?
Just having fun, and I thought this cross was interesting, and the guy that made the cross is local to me, and this is like a couple of the last seeds out of that first cross he made. So I wanted to try and continue it on.
Nice. Males or no males, buddy, they look beautiful, all of them.
Thank you.
I like that halfway one in the middle with the big leaves, indica style.
Right here.
That one over there.
Yeah, they're huge.
They
Yeah,
look,
they're
yeah,
massive.
they're massive. I was looking at them and damn, they're calling me.
Well,
It-
they look a lot bigger when I put my hand up there.
Amazing. Yeah, you just have teeny hands. I know. I'm joking. Beautiful, man. Well done, buddy.
Thank you.
It's all good. It's all good. That's a beautiful looking plant, and you're doing a great job. I mean, you said they were showing some signs earlier before you uppotted them, but they're looking great now. That's all that matters.
Yep.
Good stuff. I'm excited to hear about the flavors on those because the one on the right in particular sounded like a tasty one. Actually,
Yeah,
both of them sounded really good.
What Minnesota is saying it must be nice to be out affiliate. What's that?
What now?
In the chat, Minnesota Grows for 20 was saying it must be nice to be able to auto affiliate.
I think he's
What?
talking about because you're a dog that you'd be able to you know, lick your own private areas.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, autofilly.
Okay, that's
That's
it.
the word.
Sorry, my English is not that deep.
Dude, the fact that you can speak English,
That's practically Latin, though.
it trumps like 90% of us who speak fucking one language and barely speak that one properly. If that, so how many languages do you speak, Dog Doctor?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think. But I can
Okay.
understand more. I can understand more than 5.
Yeah, so I mean, and where you're at, that's more common, obviously, but it's still fucking fascinating, and you don't have to feel
Yeah.
bad about not knowing a phrase like that. So I'm actually
But
happy that you didn't know that one.
it's more normal for us in Europe to speak more language because even Europe being the same side of the States or Canada, we have a lot of different countries and each of it has a different language. So if you travel a little bit around just in Europe, you will, if you stay a bit in each place, you will catch up the language. And in the States, if you travel around the same, it's all in English. Or if you go Canada, you get French, I think, but that's it.
Right. Yeah, it'd be like if we went to a different
You get a lot
state
of
and they had a
Spanish
different
in
language.
Southwest Mexico,
Yeah.
Southwest
Uh,
USA.
A
You
lot of
have LA
Spanish. We
Mexican
we have a lot
also.
of we have some English dialects. Like if you go to parts of Louisiana that wouldn't sound like English speaking unless you knew people there, you wouldn't be able to understand them. So
Yeah,
some
I
of
can
the
read and also write in Bostonian. That's true.
Bostonian?
I can understand, read, and write in Bostonian. Yeah,
I'm up by
and New
Boston.
Yorker.
I don't
I'm up
even.
here in Rhode Island. It's almost Bostonian.
Oh, I see.
Sorry,
Yeah,
my
but yours is
ignorance.
easier to understand. It's not some
Yeah, the
Hollywood
slight
exaggeration.
Bostonian.
it's not an exaggeration. I watched The Golden Bachelor with my wife, and one of the ladies is from Boston, and she has the fucking accent. The one who is the pickleball captain, I think her name was like Susan or something. I can't remember, but yeah, she the R's, it cracks me up. It's
Yes. They're slurring their R's up here just slightly, but not quite as much as Boston, but just enough. It's like, oh, I'm on the cusp.
it's funny because I used to think it was like, why would they speak in such a way? But it's definitely a cultural thing. And in certain cases, like the Creole people, like some of their stuff is so difficult to understand. Like cannabis users to some extent do this, where we'll use like slang and different terminology and things that are harder for like law enforcement to understand and track. So like if they're trying to do like an investigation on some of these Creole individuals, they need somebody within the community to like essentially be a translator, even though it's English. I've watched some of these, like cops and things like that, and they'll be in New Orleans or whatever, and they'll have to bring out a guy who is raised in that culture to be able to essentially understand what the individual is saying because it literally does not sound like English at all. So it's amazing the different dialects and accents and things that are out there. But with that said, we've got about 5 minutes left, and I've been running over recently with all the final thoughts and shout outs. So I'm going to go to the guests first, going through the reverse order in which they showed up, starting with XYZ Vector. Final thoughts and shout outs for this evening.
Okay, well, I got something to add to what you just said. Dr. Coco would be all over this. He loves this conversation. He loves it. But too bad he ain't here. But hey, praise be, Dr. Coco. I'll see you next week. Anyways, XYZ Vector, I'm on Coco for Cannabis. Thanks for having me on, Jack. And thanks for the panel. Thanks, Dog Doctor, for showing off your awesome grow. It's looking so much better with the lower temps. It is
Thank you, buddy.
just crushing it. And
Thank you very
OK
much, buddy.
Grower, yes, those leaves are awesome. And Zentanol, them aphids, I don't get it. How do they change the DNA with virus? that's a different subject for a different day. And Jack Greenstock, one day you'll come to Arizona and I'll cook you some ribs. That's
I'm
all I
hanging there
gotta
in
say.
December.
Good invitation.
Well, I'll be there.
What part?
I'm in Phoenix.
Okay, so it'd have to be a stop on the way because I'm Tucson bound. But
Well, I'm
we'll be
down
in
in
touch.
Santan Valley, which is way south down by Tucson.
Sorry.
We'll figure it out.
Yep.
Well, great having you, XYZ Vector. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on, showing off your grow, even from thousands of miles away, which is an amazing feat to accomplish. I think it might be the first time that we've had a completely remote grow shown off, and cool that you're able to make that happen with all the technology. And I think next in was Dog Doctor.
Thank you guys. Thank you for having me, Jack, Spartan, Dr. J, and Matthew, the whole panel, the chat, Minnesota Grow. Thank you for commenting. That was funny, and I learned a new English word today. Thank you for that. X-ray factor, amazing. I love that computer thing, and that you were able to pretty much almost not being in a local to grow your plants. That's huge. That's a huge automation, really. Hockey grower, amazing plants, really amazing shots. Everybody, thank you for having me. I'm Dog Doctor. You guys can find me in Instagram as Dog Doctor Official or in Grow Diaries as Dog Doctor Official. I have to thank you this time and shout out Aptus as always for sponsoring with my nutrients, and now Fog for the amazing light. I'm really liking this light. She so far she's looking amazing, and I would like to shout out the Skank magazine and thank them for posting a photo from mine this few days ago, and I'm feeling pretty humbled and blessed with it. It's really huge for me. Thank you. Grow love, everybody. Keep growing, as Spartan say.
Hey, cheers to you, Dog Doctor, and congrats on that recognition. Awesome stuff. And thank you for coming and showing off the garden. Always a pleasure having you and hanging out. And last and certainly not least of our guest panelists this evening, we got Okie Grower.
Yeah, thanks for letting me come on, guys, and all the help and everything you guys do. And you can just Okie Grower on Instagram, and that's about it.
Yeah, well, great having you, and thank you for showing off the grow. We're definitely fans of the sips here, me and Spartan, and always cool to see them in action. And awesome to see some of Brandon's genetics getting crossed into stuff and grown out. So very thankful to have you and get to see it in real life. So last and certainly not least of our normal panelist is Matthew Gates.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. It was well balanced with chat and research interactions, and we should definitely not sleep on the cannabis plan. We should definitely put that into action with Dr. Coco and everyone else who wants to participate. So
That's fun.
yeah, if you're interested in more bug stuff like the cool esoterica we talked about today, you can check me out at zenthanol.com for professional inquiries, or YouTube Zenthanol, or my personal account at Sync Angel. You'll find all that information on my picture here, but also you will find it if you just search my name, Matthew Gates. So check it out.
Thank you so much for joining us as always. And I guess I'm last, but I'm your host. And you can find me at Jack Greenstock on Instagram. Jack_Greenstock is my backup account on Instagram. That's my primary account on X, which is used to be called Twitter. And I will say last week I did announce that the Ohio growers with the legalization, I was going to give out freebies for the week. And so today, currently at 6 p.m., I'm going to be ending that. I'll go through all my emails up through this point, and all those seeds will be shipped out tomorrow. But I will say I still have a Black Friday deal going on 50strains.com, 50% off of all seeds for U.S. growers. I have 5 packs and 11 packs. And any of the growers in Ohio for the next year, if you do make an order on 50strains.com, I'll do double your order size. So if you order a 5-pack, you'll get 2 5-packs. If you order an 11-pack, you'll get 2 11-packs. It's just easier than putting 22 in a single jar or putting 10 in a jar and packing multiple times, things like that. So with that said, you can also get the book on 50strains.com. It's also on sale for Black Friday. And then I'll do a little different sale for the Cyber Monday. But with all that said, it's been great hanging out with you all. We did a little bit of science, a little bit of hanging out with the community tonight. fun times as always. And we look forward to seeing you all next week. And we might do sort of the part 2 of the how to start your grow, because I think that was a good one, part 1, for the getting the new Ohio growers growing, but even California growers who've never grown before. Any state that legalizes can go back to that episode. And we never got to like drying, curing, harvesting, and some of the other things that are important. So I do want to cover that in next week's show. So look forward to that. And with all that being said, growers love, everybody. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next week. For Dr. MJ and Spartan and all the others who were with us earlier, growers love, and keep on growing.
Growers love, everybody.